Hey everyone, this is Javier Valdez. This Planet Texas podcast. I'm back with Jordan Ramirez, and we're going to talk about an anime I just recently finished watching. I recently discovered, I know it's been out for a little bit. It's called Go Go Loser Rangers.
hmm Yeah, it's good to see you and to talk about this anime. So yeah, I'm game. Yeah, for me, it's been a while since I last watched it. I watched it when it first was online during the spring or the summer of this year, and I had to rewatch it just to refocus on a lot of the things that I may have remembered or misremembered.
I was really like blown away. I was actually very surprised by it,
Hmm.
just on like the detail that I wish that Power Rangers, like our Power Rangers had. I don't know if
hmm
you were a Power Ranger fan growing up, but I was.
No, when I was young, I was not a fan of the Power Rangers. I was terrified of them as a child, so I wasn't that much of a fan. But in later years, I saw them more as campy and sort of fun instead of like just being terrifying when I was younger.
Well, the Go Go Loser Ranger show, it actually has a lot of that campiness, that cheesy,
Yeah.
except it's like on the you get to watch it from the point of view of the actual monsters,
hmm
which I was like,
Yeah,
I had a little grin, I had a little like a little smirk, so to speak. It's like,
yeah. It does have that. So the one I watched, and I guess you might have watched this differently. The one I watched was the original Japanese language version of the one I watched was the Japanese language version. I watched the subtitled version. And what was different about this one, because I had also seen other like versions of like the Sentais as they called them. In Japanese, it's called Sentai Daishikoko, Daishikaku, which in English would be loosely translated as Ranger Reject. And yeah, as you mentioned, this is told from the villain's perspective, or in this case, the anti-hero's perspective. So yeah, what I liked about this show was that it was a different take on it, and that in this version you have the Rangers who are portrayed as sort of the heroic saviors, but then you realize that this was all just an act that they put up because it was given that many years after their boss monsters, who had created the Centoans, as they're referred to in the show, they were destroyed or supposedly defeated by the Dragon Keepers, as they're called in the show, and they were basically given a truce. And the truce was that they would spare them of their lives if they enslaved them. And they had to do this act every Sunday when they do their showdown because their main boss was defeated. They had to basically act as if they were the boss monster, like the boss monster of the week, and which I thought was a pretty interesting take.
it was like, and it really throws a whole wrench on like how we perceive like people, because I don't know if from the Power Rangers Boom comics, it's kind of like I used to watch the old, but then I became like, I'm gonna say like I aged out of watching Power Rangers. But
Mm-hmm.
every once in a while, like I have a comic book account. So
Mm-hmm.
every gradually I will sit there and I'll watch YouTube and they're all like, well, Lord Zed became a Power Ranger. And then, they you hear like the backstories and just Boom Comics actually gives you like the detailed backstory of Power Rangers that you never actually got within the television show itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually pretty neat. I never thought of it that I actually never read them. I never was a I never was a Power Rangers fan to restate earlier, but it's pretty interesting of what you brought up. But what I also liked about watching the what watching this show is that some of the voice actors who had done the subtitle version. Um, I remembered looking up, there's this website I like to look up called myanimelist.net, and they would give you like a list of who voiced who or the characters they played on the show. And the lead in this show, who plays in the Japanese version, he's called Sento in D, or in the English version, I think he's called Villain D. He was also the voice of a leader of a similar Sentai type group called the the Gelatos, and it was in this anime show that I watched called Love After World Domination, and he played the leader. His character was the Red Gelato who fell in love with the villain who well, not the villain, but she's like part of the villainous group, and it's a pretty fun show. And the other character, there's another actor, Fumihiko Tachiki, who plays the Pink Dragon Keeper's like June first rank officer. He was the narrator in that show as well. So it's like there's always connections between what I watch and the actors who play them. I'm always fascinated by trying to put together actors who were the voice of this character, and then later find out that they had voiced a character from another show with a similar theme or topic. So that was something that I pretty much enjoyed as somebody who has watched various anime shows and has tried to look up different seiyus who voiced these different characters.
That's pretty interesting. Like I've never
Yeah.
bothered actually looking up the names. That I know I'm gonna get some shit for it, but I just don't. I'm not
Yeah.
really into finding out like who it is and who it was.
Mm.
But like I can recognize the voices. Like you just know who they are. Like you always know who's Vegeta's voice is. It's like that's worth looking
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
because it's like
It's yeah, it's always fun to look up certain people because I I'm sort of an anime fan. I've been watching almost as opposed to watching movies because I don't know. I mean, I like watching movies, but at the same time there's not that many good ones. I always turn to watching animated shows from Japan because they're much more like my comfort zone as opposed to like watching like certain movies that come out in theaters because that's sort of my bread and butter.
it is. It is like and every once in a while, like I'll end up watching an anime that catches my eye. Like
Hmm.
just like Go Go Loser Rangers. It really did catch my eye. I watched like the first episode, and then the monster is like, "Well, I want my revenge," and and all this other
Yeah.
nonsense. You know, the normal anime tropes. But then
Hmm.
it gets a little more complicated after that when you see like not all the Rangers or what are they actually called anyways?
They're called the
They're
Dragon Keepers in the
the
show.
Dragon
And the sh
Keepers. The
Yes.
all the Dragon Keepers aren't actually on the same page.
No. No, because there's a scene that is either in the first or the second episode where Sento Indy is being recruited by one of the junior first ranks, the junior first rank from the yellow from for the Yellow Dragon Keeper. Her name is Suzukuri, and she states that wanted to she states that she knows every little information about the Dragon Keepers and how you could topple them from the inside. Because her reason why she wants the Dragon Keepers to, fall apart was because you know how in romantic dramas you always fall in love with the hero or the romantic lead and the romantic female lead, and you're rooting for them. Well, she's sort of like, I'm rooting for the other person instead of the main leads. So that's her reason why she wants the Dragon Keepers basically to topple. So it's a pretty interesting reason. And with Sento and D originally disguising himself as a human, and then he later disguises himself as one of the recruiters for the Dragon Keepers throughout the second half of the story. He's pretty much trying to learn he's pretty much trying to learn how things work on the inside as opposed to being on the outside. So it's a pretty interesting premise. And also, he never forgets, like, his real goal is basically just to defeat the Dragon Keepers, which I thought was pretty much what his goal was, but he also had a sort of complex goal of what he wanted to do.
Well, I think it got more complicated the further that he gets involved with like the other class ranks. Like especially when he gets
Hmm.
to know those people, finds out that
Yeah.
they're not all bad. It's kind of like not all the humans are bad and like not all the monsters want, it's not just as clear cut as it seems.
No, it isn't because when you first see them, they have no intention of domination or they have no intention of enslavement or anything like that. They're basically just there because they're terrified because they had never been without a leader. They're basically just like they're basically just like following the leader, and it's like a herd mentality. And when Sento Indi, who is sort of independent of that herd mentality group, it's almost like he's the one individual within the Sentoins or the fighters, as they're called in the show, who is just like, I don't want to do this. I just can't, do this shtick anymore. I just want to do what I want to do. And as you mentioned, it does get complicated because he does have to deal with certain individuals within the Dragon Keepers organization. And the fact that even though it's supposed to be pristine and clear cut on the inside, they're very much dysfunctional and corrupted on the inside, which is what I think makes the story even more interesting as I watched it, going from the first episode up until the last episode of the first season.
Yeah, like it was really surprising for me when I sat there and I actually saw that there's actually like other monsters that infiltrated the
Hmm.
Dragon Keepers organization.
Yes. The one that is referred to as Lord Peltrola in the story, he only appears in the second half of the story. Because originally, when the fighters thought that all their boss monsters were defeated, it turns out not all of them were defeated. Some of them actually survived, and that was sort of like a surprising sort of like turn in the story that at least one of them survived and had been able to basically go inside the organization of the Dragon Keepers and try to, defeat every single employee who works within the Dragon Keepers organization. And it's like a battle between, uh, the up and coming trainees who were just trying to, be the ranks of the Dragon Keepers, and of course Centoin D and another character, Centoin Double X, who was one of the few female characters of the fighters to actually side with Lord Peltrola, which I thought was pretty interesting.
You're talking about what's her name that's wearing the yellow, or we actually don't know what is her name?
Oh, the first rank?
Yeah, the first rank, what's her name? I can't
Uh,
she's
so
pulling
so
all the strings. I don't know what her name
oh,
is.
Suzukiri, Suzukiri.
I wish those easier
Yeah,
names.
yeah. Well, I've been watching various anime shows, and I'm somewhat good at trying to pronounce them. But for those who are unable to pronounce them, I try to use the Americanized way of saying it. I try to do Americanized pronunciations of Japanese
Yeah.
names.
Oh no, I'm terrible at all of it, but
Yeah,
I'm very bad at all of it. Yeah, so we have this one lady, and she's just like it just seems like she's pulling all the strings. She's the one that's
she
in the yellow. She's just
yeah
pulling
she's
every
the
corner, everything. It's just kind of like I just couldn't
yeah.
like I understand like anime terms like hey, the
Mm-hmm.
next season comes out next year. So I don't actually think it's that far off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I did read a little bit of the original source material, the manga, and the manga does expand a little bit further. I won't reveal any too many details because there's a lot of like story developments that occur, which I think will be covered in the second season. So the first season covered like I think volumes 1 through 4 or 5 of the original story, and it pretty much covers what we were discussing about, just from the Sunday showdown up until we get to like the the ones who are not sided with each color, like the ranks of the Dragon Keepers, when they're starting to be promoted. So that's where we are. So I think the next season will focus on just like the promotion and then much more details about what will happen further into the story. So that's what I'm thinking they're gonna do for the second season. I've been ahead when I read some of the manga.
See, I haven't read any of the manga. Like I saw like the first 6 episodes, and then
Mm.
I was all like, "Hey, Jordan, you want to talk about Go Go Loser Rangers?" And you're like, "Yeah, let's talk about some Go Go Loser Ranger." I'm like,
Yeah,
uh.
I'm yeah. It's been yeah, as I said, it's been a while. I've been watching other anime shows as well. So they're all like separated into different categories or subgenres. It's not like one anime show is going to be a fantasy or one is going to be action or the other is going to be drama. It's all going to be like subgenres instead. They always do this whenever one is a fan of anime or manga. They always categorize them by the subgenre instead of by the main genre, which is something that I try to focus on when I think about what type of show this is or what type of theme or topic that the show will focus on.
Yeah, I know. It's like, but for me, it needs to catch my eye. Like, it has to be something. Like, I want to say like I'm your typical anime fan, but I'm not really. Like, it needs to be something like really good for me to truly get the attention of it. Like, I was
Oh,
actually, huh?
did you see Kaiju number 8?
I saw 1 or 2 episodes of Kaiju Number 8.
That
I
one
thought
I
that was
thought was
very
pretty.
good.
Yeah, I watched the entire first season, and I read there's going to be a compilation film coming early next year. So that one I thought was pretty interesting. And yeah, but going back to Go Go Loser Rangers, what were you going to say earlier before I interrupted?
Well, I was gonna say, there's a lot of backstory. There's a
Hmm.
lot of backstory in the first season. Like there was more backstory. Like I was more interested in, like I understand we got to the series itself, but I wanted to see the beginning of like, was there more like boss monsters? Was there like more of how did we get to this point?
Hmm. I
But of
think
course,
in
like
the
I didn't read the animes, by the way. I just watched the anime itself, and
hmm. I think in
so.
the I think in the manga they do expand on more of the boss monsters than just Lord Peltrola. I mean, when Sento D was first brought to life along with the other Sentoins, we do see a little bit of glimpse into some of the boss monsters, but we don't see their faces or we don't know their names. But I think it will be covered, but I think it's covered much later in the manga, some of the boss monsters. But I don't know if they'll cover all of them for season 2 or maybe for a season 3. But we'll just wait and see.
And another thing is a lot of the Dragon Rangers. We're just gonna say Dragon Rangers.
Okay.
I know they're gonna be mad.
Yeah. No.
There's a lot of
But
tragic stories. Like they have a lot of tragedy that it's like, wasn't it the Pink Ranger lost her legs? I was like,
yes, yeah. So the pink dragon keeper,
the Pink Dragon
who
Keeper.
yeah, the pink dragon keeper, along with her brother, whom Sento India is disguising himself in the second half of the story. Yeah. So their parents in the flashback that we get to understand, their parents were very much against the violence of you know, they were pretty much against the violence between the Dragon Keepers and the Sentoins. Basically, they were against them. And then it was later revealed that they were sort of like part of this almost like Christian type of cult. And it turns out their leader was one of the boss monsters who ended up killing all the cult followers and ended up trying to take out the last two witnesses. And that the witnesses were the Pink Dragon Keeper, who her legs were injured, and her brother was trying to save her. And until the Blue Dragon Keeper, the original, save them from, being killed by the boss monster, Lord Peltrolo. And the way he was, when you first see him, he's sort of this sort of godlike, angelic figure. And I just find it pretty interesting that some of the boss monsters, even this one particular boss monster, he sort of looked like something from Christian iconography, but sort of in a subverted or inverted version of it, which I thought was pretty interesting.
You're talking about like the artistic route that they went. We could just say it like that.
Yeah, the
That they
altruistic
made
route.
a yeah, where they made them look kind
Yeah.
of like angel-ish, like angelic beings.
Yeah, well, that's for the one boss monster. I don't think the other boss monsters in the show are like that, but he's just one of them.
I mean, we could see what happens. Like you already know more than I know, like on this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean I mean some of them have a different theme, or some of them have like a different like a thematic sort of like motif that they always try to do. But yeah, so that one was one of the tragedies. Then there was one of the recruits who signed up. Originally, he didn't want to be a dragon keeper, but his brother was trying to be. But his brother in the story was like, I think he was like a junior first rank of the blue dragon keeper, and then he was later killed. And well, he was later killed, but they were trying to think that this whole like boss monsters were, like they died and they didn't survive, and it turns out the reason why one of the recruits wanted to join up was not because he wanted to avenge his brother's death. I mean, it was part of it, but because he also wanted to know like what was the real dark secret that they were hiding behind closed doors. So that was something I thought was pretty interesting. And then there was another one that I thought was, I mean, as tragedies go. And then of course there was the Blue Dragon Keeper, who the new one, who it turns out was very much a petty criminal. His father, who was one of the originals, they mentioned he was, I think, taken down, and he had like scars on his face from it. Turns out his employer was also a boss monster. So, okay, there was another boss monster, but he only appeared in a flashback. And the Red Dragon Keeper wanted him to be recruited only if he agreed to be a part of it, instead of like going to jail or anything like that, even though he had some of the scars on his face.
Well, because it seems like the Dragon Keepers took the monsters like
Hmm.
real lightly, except for the boss monsters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Uh, exactly right. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting show once one gets to see it. And the other ones that I thought were pretty interesting, I liked the junior, the red junior rank, who I thought was pretty interesting. I know the actor who portrays him, but I thought he was a pretty interesting character, Shun Tokita, as he's called. And when you see him, he appears with what appears to be like a makeup on his face. And then when he's beaten the shit out of him by Sento and D, he has like bandaged face, and he has to have like his face reconstructed or something like that, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Of that series, how they actually have like scars and everything, or they actually like went through something and you visually see it.
Hmm. Exactly. Like facial scars or loss of limbs, or in any other case just like damages to their body, which I thought was pretty interesting as well when you get to see the story progressing. And also when I watched it, there was uh they also mentioned the divine artifact, which is unlike what they do in the shows. What they use in the shows when they supposedly in the Sunday showdowns, when they defeat the so-called monsters, those were props. But when they use the actual divine artifacts outside of the showdowns, they the excuse me, the Dragon Keepers, when they defeat the monsters, they don't regenerate because the only way that they can come back to life is if they regenerate. But for some reason, when they use a divine artifact, they don't regenerate. They basically die. They're not immortal anymore, which I thought was a pretty interesting thing that you had to go for when you watch the entire series, and just the relationship of the reconciliation between humans and monsters, and the fact that you have sort of like I think of it as sort of like, even though it's a show, it's like sort of a humanitarian crisis, but I think it will be covered much later when you get to like the second season or maybe like part of the third.
Yeah, I also think like the divine artifacts on the show are actually the monster's weapons. That's kind of like my answer on why they can't regenerate is maybe those are actually the monster's weapons and not actually the Dragon Keeper's weapons. They just happen to be using them.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they're the Dragon Keeper's weapons, of course, but yeah. But I thought it was a pretty interesting show to watch because this was something that I was interested in as well. I originally was not going to watch this show because I thought it didn't look interesting, but then as I started watching like maybe the first few episodes of it, I just thought, okay, this is pretty interesting because I've seen like other, anime shows that would try to do their own version of like the Sentai Rangers, whether it's done comedically or whether it's done in a sort of like inverted version, like it would be sort of like unexpected or transgressive way. I'm all for it. I would say something that's either comedic or something that's transgressive or something that's like it goes in a different direction. I find it pretty interesting than just the usual typical Sentai Rangers type of programs.
Yeah, it is, but it also for me it goes back to the Boom Comics because like I've always been a big fan of like everything that Boom Comics does because I
Mm-hmm.
think they're doing a lot of good stuff. Like I can't like praise them enough.
Mm.
But you always see like there's like a blur every now and then in the Power Rangers like comic books of like who's good and who's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a lot of that in this. Like it's not like over complicated where I just like don't want to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Like because there's been a few animes where I just watch and I'm like, well, what the hell's going on? Like like what the hell just happened? Like who's it? And then it's backstory, backstory, backstory. Next episode, backstory, backstory, backstory. Then next
Mm-hmm.
episode, more backstory. And I'm like, I don't want to watch this shit no more. It's like, but we don't get that. We don't get that in this. It's like you get what happens, and then you get straight to the main story. Like it's consistently to me stays on track.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if it's on your end, but it's on my end saying that we're at least like 9 minutes before this wraps up or something. I don't know. Maybe it's just my
Yeah,
end.
yeah. No, it's my end because I'm doing the free one. It's
Okay.
like
Uh, yeah, no worries. Okay, so uh, just to get things going, besides watching that show, I've been watching like a lot of other anime shows where, as you mentioned, when you watch it and you don't and the logic is like not there and it just sort of boggles you, I'm cool with that. I'm just like I've watched a lot of like other anime shows where they don't give you like too much logic or grounded reality, but it's just like maybe for cultural purposes, maybe some people may not understand what it means. Like I watched My Dear Friend Noko Tan, for example, or Grandma and Grandpa Are Young Again, or maybe something along the lines of I don't know, new seasons of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. Any of those shows I watch, I'm into those types of shows, either if it's absurdist or either because it's a continuation of what I watched. But yeah, I just find it pretty interesting.
I mean, like I am a big fan of X. So, like, don't get me wrong. Like, I could take in the stuff that is like given to me. It's just I get drawn away when there's just like too much of it.
Hmm.
Like, if I wanted to watch the Dragon Keepers and the monsters play their story out, I want to know
Mm-hmm.
about the boss monsters. I want to know
Mm.
like why are the monsters infiltrating the Dragon Keepers? I want to know all these things.
Mm.
Like, and one of the
Yeah.
big. Go ahead.
No, no, no. Go ahead. I think I interrupted.
Well, one of the things that I'm like looking forward to is seeing the confrontation of our main character against the Red Dragon Keeper, like the
Yeah.
actual. But I'm pretty sure that's very far far away
Mm-hmm.
from like what it takes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was the confrontation that happened like before the end of the first half when he stole his divine artifact and he basically took part of his arm and with his regenerative and mimicry ability, made it look as if the Red Dragon Keeper was going to take his divine artifact, but it turns out he had it in his arm and he was sending it back to Zuzukuri, the yellow junior rank Dragon Keeper, which I thought was pretty interesting. And then you start to understand his sort of psychopathy before it ends. You start to see that the Red Dragon Keeper, even though he's portrayed as sort of heroic and he's portrayed as sort of a charming guy, he's a very violent individual. One scene, for example, his junior first rank told him that he ought to resign and that he should be the Red Dragon Keeper, and then he murders him just as they were about to eat their lunch.
Either meal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, just as they were about to eat their meal. And then there was another time, this is pretty much or there was another time when there was going to be a whistleblower and he had to take him out because he didn't want any secrets about what goes on in the organization to leak out. So he had to kill him as well. So I just find it interesting that there are some dragon keepers that he's one of the few dragon keepers who, even though he's trying to be composed and he's trying to be nice, that he's also a very violent and really irrational and violent and uncompromising person that I think would be extremely interesting to see more of.
You know what I'm curious about the most
Hmm.
in this
Yeah.
Go-Go Lucha? Like,
Hmm.
where's the Sixth Ranger?
Uh, I don't think they had a sixth ranger when I saw it because I know there was red, blue, green, yellow, pink.
Well, the only reason I say that is because
Hmm.
if they're going off the trope of Power
Hmm.
Rangers and all the other like kind of stories, like there's always more
Hmm.
Rangers. There's
Yeah.
always so there has to be another Dragon Keeper somewhere. At least
Yeah.
one, maybe two. There has to be more of them. I just don't know when they're gonna come in.
Maybe, maybe not. So, who knows? That's all I can give you. But as I said, I don't want to reveal too much of what will happen because I've read a little bit of the manga. So, you'll just have to wait and see when season 2 comes out, and maybe they will come up with one or not. So that's all I can give you. I don't want to give away
Yeah,
too
yeah,
much of
yeah.
the
Don't
story.
spoil it for me because like I haven't read
No,
the
no,
manga,
no.
and
I, I
I
I'm
know
not.
that like because I know there's people that read the manga. I know there's people
Mm-hmm.
that know every bit about the show,
Mm-hmm.
and I've only watched the show.
Yeah.
That's the only intake I've gotten. But that's enough for me to like
Yeah.
to do a little episode to talk about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But I have one complaint and one future complaint. It's not an actual complaint yet. I don't want to see every season where they take down one of the Rangers. Like, I don't want to have to go through 5 seasons of watching this
Mm.
unless it takes like a really good turn, which I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it's going to. So hopefully we get like 3, maybe 4 seasons, and then we're good. We're done.
Yeah, it depends on the running of the manga since I think it's still ongoing. So we'll just wait and see.
Yeah, because like one of my nightmares is like One Piece, or I'll just like 1,000 and
Mm.
2,000 episodes. Like I ain't trying to read that shit.
Oh. Well, I watched Detective Conan, and that's been on since the late 90s, and I still like to read more of whatever they have. And I watched like almost 11, I've watched almost 1100 episodes, and I still keep up to
Oh my
date.
God. Like I couldn't, I don't know if I could do that. Like
I
I know
I
people
did, and I did. I'm one of like the few people who watched it since I watched it since 2013, and I you know what? I don't care if people say they're tired of it. I'm like, yeah, I'm tired of it too, but I feel like I just want to keep going. I never want to stop.
see, 'cause like I think the best thing we compare something like that to is like when our parents and grandparents watch our novellas, you know,
Hmm.
and you're just like, oh, something happened. It's just like,
Yeah, yeah. Well, my grandparents on on my dad's side, they watch telenovelas. My on my mom's side, never. They never watch telenovelas. They maybe like
so,
maybe like post-war melodramas or maybe like miniseries or television shows, but never telenovelas. They never watch them.
no, like they watch
No,
General Hospital, like all of the daytime soaps, like uh
um, I don't
I mean
think
that's
they are no, I don't think they're a fan of the soaps, not that I am aware of. My mom and my dad, I don't think they're a huge soap opera fans. As I mentioned, only my grandparents on my dad's side, they watch telenovelas, but on my mom's side, never. They never watch like soap operas as much.
oh man, like, yeah, that's like this is like our like novellas is basically watching these animes like in those long forms, and I'm just kind of like
Hmm.
ah, you know, I want to criticize them, but I really can't because I've been playing like
Yeah,
and watching. I've been watching wrestling for like 20 years already, so I can't actually say nothing.
no, I understand. All right.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
you want to say anything before we log off?
Okay, before we log off, I well, just that I like the show and I like talking with you, and it's been great to discuss this anime show that I have not seen lately, but it's good. And I like this conversation, so thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And when I come across another anime, I'll cross it by you, and then you can be like, yay or nay or this say, and then we can
Okay,
watch it.
thank
Like
okay, thank you so much.
I think the next episode that we should do is we should talk about Christmas movies because it's coming up.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
close to
gonna
the
send
holiday
you an
season.
image. I'm gonna send you an image, and then we're gonna talk about a couple of those movies.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much.
All right, and I want to thank everybody for coming on and listening to us talk about Go Go Loser Rangers.
Okay, thank you so much.